I'd like to show my gratitude and appreciation for all our panelists here this evening. They're coming on their own time so that they can share with you their stories and to hopefully encourage young women to explore STEAM. So when we put this panel together, we were debating whether to call it a STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or STEAM panel, where the A stands for the arts. In reality, the gap between men and women in science, especially the biological sciences and mathematics, is not so great. The real gap lies in technology and engineering. We want to heighten the awareness that no matter what discipline you pursue, whether it's science, technology, engineering, arts, or mathematics, that you're building the foundation so that you can pursue the other disciplines. So now, the format of this evening, Kathy and I are going to be posing questions to the panel, and then there'll be opportunity for you to ask the panelists your questions. And does everybody have an index card? Because we'd like you to write your questions down, and then Shannon Edwards and Darby Teleka is going to help collect the cards, and then we'll ask questions that way. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists.
Marina, we're having a hard time hearing. If you could hold that up to the camera. Okay. Or you can sit.
Is the mic on? No. That's why I stood up.
Stand up.
Okay. So Kathy Messenger, to my left, has a bachelor's in science in biochemistry and a minor in environment toxicology.
It's not yours. It's our system, right?
She has worked at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and Densivia, a medical diagnostics company. Ms. Messenger has been teaching biology and chemistry here at Los Gatos High since 2005. In 2011, she began teaching the Advanced Science Research, or ASR class, which you will learn more about this evening. Severa Teleka, to my right, is an honor graduate.
On-off switch.
where she designed and implemented a sub-$25 solar-powered water purification system for developing countries. Severa is a 2012 Google Science finalist and has spoken on STEM topics at the Academy of Science, PBS NewsHour, and interviewed on Science Friday by Iron Radio. Severa is currently at Stanford University pursuing a degree in electrical engineering and biochemistry. Jenny Chen graduated from MIT in 2011 with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. In 2012, she received her Master's in Engineering from MIT. While at MIT, she worked in the MIT Computer Graphics Group and is lucky to have found her love for making pretty pictures and to working on computer graphics and sleek user interfaces at Apple. She's currently a software engineer at Apple, working on the iWork tool suite, Keynote, Pages, and numbers for both iOS and Mac. April Grove is a PhD student in computer science at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She's working on artificial intelligence for virtual agents, which are primarily used in video games. April loved gaming all her life and is now wanting to make more world-friendly games. She has applied for computer science training to create a blackboard embroidery pattern generator quilting pattern making interface, and a game for teaching players how to crochet. Ayman Nadeem graduated from Systems Design Engineering at the University of Waterloo, specializing in artificial intelligence. Basically, she spent a lot of time doing lots of different things. She interned at 3 different startups in her Canadian homeland before working for Microsoft as Dropbox and is now product manager at Khan Academy. She's a big advocate for women, girls, and underrepresented groups going into STEM because she has personally struggled with challenges associated with gender and race.
So are we hearing us now? No? Yes?
Yes.
No? Louder? Good? Like this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm happy to introduce some students that I convinced to join us this evening that are from my ASR class, Advanced Science Research. I chose the upper class women. We do have a very good enrollment that's usually at least half women each year, and a lot of engineering, and this year, for the first time, much more computer science, which leads me to our first student, Ann Zepecki. She's currently a junior at Los Gatos, and her project this year is centered around developing a website to teach girls to code in an engaging and fun way. And next to her is senior Michaela Gori. She is an immigrant from Italy and is very pleased to have the opportunity to work on her own project trying to develop plastic from milk protein. Then we have another senior, and the rest of them are seniors, Olivia Woodford-Berry. This is her 3rd year in ASR, and she is choosing this year to focus on trying to help plants become more drought tolerant by introducing a substance known as biochar. I'll let her explain that to you more later. She's done 2 other very fascinating projects in her earlier time at ASR, and I'm so pleased to have her as a senior leader in my class this year. Next to her is Lila Sateh, and she is a senior again, and her project is looking at Drosophila, and help me here, Lila, again? Optogenetics of Drosophila, so Drosophila being the fruit fly, and she's going to be trying to do some behavior and breeding programs to look at how that works in the fruit fly. And then finally we have Rachel Resnick, who's going to be doing some coding to try and come up with a picture password protected notepad that you can use on your cellular device to hopefully store all your other passwords and make it a little bit more difficult for people to get in there and find them.
So first we're going to ask questions of our professional panelists, and then we'll have the opportunity to ask questions of our student panelists. So we heard from the bios that some of them got into what they're doing because they were so excited about it. I think all just loved computer games, and so now working on creating more rural-friendly games. So I want to find out more from the other panelists. What experience got you curious about STEAM, and how did this inspire you to go into the field you are in
So a bit about my background. When I was in high school and around like 15, 16, even younger than that, I was really not really thinking about engineering or computer science or any of those fields. I was into activism, I was into environmentalism, and I cared a lot about artwork. And while I was I was pretty good at math and science, the connection between math and science actually having utility or actually being used for something that I cared about was never made until I did this summer camp program. Now, I'm Canadian, so none of you have probably heard of the summer camp program, unfortunately, but it's called Shad Valley. And when I went to Shad Valley, it was this month-long enrichment program where we do a lot of science and entrepreneurship, and I had some mentors there. They were actually university professors within engineering that sort of filled in those gaps for me and said, hey, engineering is actually a service profession, you know? You can take a lot of the skills that you get learning like a lot of mathematics and apply them very readily to solving a lot of real-world problems, whether that's in, spaces that help improve environmental problems and sustainability issues, or whether it's in biomedical spaces. And so that sort of just like helped me transition mindsets, and I saw, wow, I can actually use this as a really powerful set of skills to move forward a lot of the causes that I'm passionate about.
So I guess I'll go from here. Mostly just to kind of interject a little bit for you parents, that when you feel like your children aren't listening to you, when you're nudging them to try new things, that giving them that perspective of trying it and seeing how you can apply it is really important. And sometimes their perceptions of what something is really false, and they're not going to know that until they actually get in there and do it. I was a great example of that when I was in my first years of college. I found out I got an opportunity to go work in a lab at Lawrence Livermore and do research, and I wasn't going to do it. And my parents really pushed me to do it. And if I hadn't done it, it would have changed my life. It changed what direction I took. I found out I liked something. I had no idea what it was really like. And so I think I want to encourage all of you parents. I know it seems like our kids aren't listening to us a lot of times, but you do have a powerful voice in this mentoring role in addition to all these young women up here and our students.
And actually, I'm Samara here. I'm probably the youngest professional on this panel, and this is specifically to all the young people in the audience. Sometimes the adults also don't really know what you're capable of doing, and it's your responsibility to say, I can do this, I can go do this, I have faith in myself, and I will go do it. I'll get to it a little later, but when I'm doing my research project in Bangladesh, one of the very adult people who was actually a chemistry professor told me I should reproduce my project, and I knew I should, and I knew I could, so I said I'm going to do it anyway. And so you might always have the support you need, but if you believe in yourself, you can absolutely do it. So I'm just going to tack that on as well.
I guess this is more transitioning.
Sorry, you're going to have to use the mic, because it cannot hear it either. So you don't put it close to your
Hello?
No, that was not.
Turn up the speakers.
Hello? Hello? Much better? There we go. Well, in the terms of Laura went inside about just realizing also that there's a lot more engineering and science around you. What got me into engineering and science was like my family used to go to Disneyland all the time, and at Disneyland there's like animated talking figures, which seems all cool and magical and happy, but when you think about it, there's a lot of engineering and science behind it. So like we went to a talk to sport, there's some like AI character talk to little kids at the same time, and it was from those kind of things that was like, oh, those are really cool things that I could be doing. Or like roller coasters. One of the like first games that I really wanted was roller coaster tycoon. And it's like I didn't know the engineering behind it, but just the fact that like you could make people fly on a roller coaster was like the precursor to all that engineering stuff.
So April. I know that you really love to play games and to make them, so I want to hear about some of the things that you've experienced and that's relevant to where you are today.
Sound waves. Don't eat them at the speakers.
Oh, no, there goes. Okay, there we go. So I've always loved games. I've had an older brother and a father who's super supportive. Me being interested in technical things, I've always had a logical mind, and I've seen games as like systems where I can exercise logically and get some really interesting humanitarian stories out of it. Because
a lot of people think that games are just shooting and violence and stuff, but there are so many games out there being made by so many different people about every issue under the sun. It's amazing. And the more I played games, the more I realized they could be a force for good if you can get people to interact with issues that they may not even think are a thing. Like putting people in the role of someone who might be gay or transgender or a woman and putting them in a situation and like living in that role. I mean, the key to games is interactivity and experiencing, putting yourself literally in someone else's shoes. And the more I've found through games, the more I love them, and it was just a burning passion of I'm going to do whatever I need to learn how to make these games. And that has included being around a bunch of guys who think it's all about shooting and who may look down on my abilities, but I don't care. And I have so many games to cite that do well and that are popular and that show meaningful issues to me and everyone around me. And so my mission is to make more women aware of these awesome games that are out there and to make more of myself.
Okay, I'm Sabera again. And for me, I always really loved science and math just because there was always a right answer. There wasn't really an interpretation of, oh, the adult says it's wrong, so it can't be wrong, or the adult says it's right, so it has to be right. There was also always a way for me to see why is it wrong or why is it right, and that was very appealing. But the reason I really wanted to pursue science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics is because I'm half Bengali. And when I went back to Bangladesh for the first time, I saw the social implications of what science can do. And so my first science career project, was actually in Ms. Messenger's ASR class. And I worked on building a sub-$25 water purification system. And the main purpose was to help people who actually needed it. And so it was just seeing how science and the math involved in science could actually make the world a better place. And I think, especially for women, they like to look at the broad picture about what can I do to make the world a better place and what can I do to make it different. And I think pursuing any type of engineering or science or math is a great way to do that because you can tangibly see how you can make something better. And doing that and helping people in the process, it brings in the humanities as well as the sciences. And in my opinion, if you can combine the two and help people while doing something you love, I think that's a great combination, and that's why I'm choosing to stay in the science, technologies, engineering, and mathematics, and why I love it.
To mildly add on that, grouping the A in our STEAM and the art on top of that, like, at first when I was in high school, I actually liked that part of science and math too, and I was like, well, this is the right answer. And then when I as I've become older, I've noticed a lot more arty creativity into my more professional job, just in terms of like, oh, there's not always a right answer in terms of like building something that will help people because maybe that's a little ambiguous. And so I feel like when you're in high school, it all seems like very, oh, here's numbers, spit it out, here's the right answer. But just to keep in mind, as you get older, like there's a lot more creativity that you would maybe not expect in your future jobs.
Okay, so just to build on that again and to give some perspective, right? In general, the students who join ASR have very much Sabera's perspective that they would like to make a difference. They want to apply what they learned, and to build on what Jenny said is when you get out in the real world and are solving real world problems, there's more than one way to do it. There isn't always just one right answer. There are lots of paths you can take to solve problems, and I think that's what staying involved in the STEM fields will do for our young women, is that they're going to be able to see all these possibilities.
So what I really like, I think Eamon said it, is that engineering is a service field. And I really like that because it means that, you know, if we can go into engineering or STEAM, that we're going to, gain skills to make a difference in this world. So I heard, Coffee, you said something about mentors. I think you mentioned that a little while ago about mentors. And so my next question to the panel here is, who were your mentors and what specific influence did he or she have on you?
So want me to start? Okay, so my mentors actually, because I came of age a few years ago, were men. I had role models that were women, but the people that pushed me to take that next step were both men. And I really want to just emphasize that, as much as we would love to all have a mentor that's the same gender and same perspective, that mentors are just people who are willing to push you out of your comfort zone, who are willing to say they believe in you and that you should try this and you can be successful.
I'll have to fight for the mic. So my mentors, I think, are a little bit unusual too. They're not necessarily all women, and they're not necessarily all, scientists or engineers. One of my biggest mentors that I can think of, and especially to the parents in the audience, this might resonate with you, is my mother. Now, my mom is a makeup artist. Our careers are extremely different. She has no engineering background whatsoever, but going through high school, she was always an active component of my education and my broader career plans. Number one, she was always in the loop with what I was doing, and I found that it really helped me just having sort of, an open communication with her and having someone to bounce ideas off of and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I have this general interest, and then she would actually sit with me and use whatever tools or whatever knowledge she had, and sometimes she didn't have it. But I remember sitting there with her, like going and searching stuff up on Google, whether it was different programs, and looking into things. And she was always such a huge proponent of taking this broad sort of goal and helping me figure out, okay, well you have this broad goal that you want to get to. How do we break this down? How do we actually figure out like a game plan in place, and what do you need to do to actually get there? So if I, for example, wanted to go to the University of Waterloo to study system design engineering, that was like, sort of the end goal. What math contest did I need to partake in beforehand, or like what sort of skills did I need to get beforehand? And she was there along the way. When it came to my job interviews, even she was always in the loop, and even just providing that ounce of confidence in the beginning, it really goes so far, even if your mentor doesn't necessarily come from an engineering background. So just to the parents a little bit, I think that that's very powerful and very empowering.
Not surprisingly, I met my mentor in a game, a Dumbledore Cup. But she was a transgender woman from male to female, and she's from Australia. And we worked in the same field together, and were friends for months and months online. And then she found out that I was going to try and go into game design. And she, from her experiences trying to become a woman, was very suddenly aware of the troubles facing women, specifically in computer science. And she was an enormous help in terms of technically giving me support, but as mainly being a cheerleader in my corner and saying, you have the skills. Like, you might not feel confident, you might not be like have the strongest background of the people in the class, but you can work to become the strongest person in the class if you try. And so she was very much always giving me support in terms of trying to build my confidence and make sure I held the confidence in the face of other people who might talk down to me. And that was the most powerful mentorship that I was able to have when I was an undergraduate. It helped carry me through the whole way.
I would say I had a combination of different mentors. Like parents obviously are a strong factor, and just on top of like, wow, my mother was also a strong role model. I think the role of fathers is also really important, right? Like just to cement the fact that like we're all people. It's not like a gender biased kind of thing, and I think having that fatherly as well as motherly support in that will help cement that like, oh, engineering is just for men. In addition to that, I would say one of my other mentors was one of my advisors who I worked for at Disney for a small amount of time. And I actually reached out to him on my own. I basically like scoured through a bunch of like old MIT alum listings and sent a lot of emails. And so the moral of the story is that while it's good to have the parents' support and the backing, like I feel like it's also good to tell your children to reach out on their own as well, or for them to take that incentive to really go out and maybe put themselves out there, and also to give them the confidence to put themselves out there as well.
think parents are very, very important in this entire process. For me, I would describe my parents being more as my partners, however. I think mentors are more people who they are maybe at a higher level and aren't maybe as close with you as they are, but they're willing to open doors for you. And to me, that is the most important thing that a mentor can do. And just willing to go and find that doctor or that researcher and say, I've known this girl, I've known this boy, they're extremely amazing, they know what they're doing, please let them have a position in your lab. And I feel like to get a mentor, you just have to, as was said before, reach out and email someone. And I know still some of the students in the audience are fairly young, but being a young person and going out and saying, oh, can I have your business card so I can email you and like look at this opportunity? Oh, do you know this person? Can you maybe shoot an email and copy us both on it so that I can get this experience? I feel like older people and older mentors, they really want to because they love seeing young people who are very passionate and very enthralled about the work they're doing. So even if you're very young and you don't necessarily know if this track, or whether it's biology or any of the engineering, is the right thing for you, finding someone who is willing to find opportunities for you and put you up for those opportunities is what really, in my opinion, a mentor is. Versus for me, the parents are the ones who are always emotionally there for you and ready to look at the opportunities such as like, oh, you need to help and get into the summer program versus the big picture of going to get research opportunities or going to meet this professional. So I think, in my opinion, there's a little bit of a divide there. Both are extremely important, but I think having that parental support is the cornerstone of it, and then finding someone who's maybe at a higher level to go get the bigger picture ideas is what a mentor is, and what my experience with mentors has been.
Okay, so again, to help those that are younger in the audience, maybe are feeling a bit overwhelmed, how am I possibly going to ever find a mentor? I thought I'd maybe turn back to our student panel a little bit and let you all know that one of the big things I took from when I did put my feet in the lab and then work is that obviously you never are working alone, that you're always collaborating with people. So it's one of the themes of our class, that not only do they work with each other, but we actually, since even Sabera was in my class, I've instituted a more formal path where they're trying to reach out to mentors so that they will practice making those cold calls, those cold emails, and seeing if people can reply. Because one of the most discouraging things for young people in the high school age group is that you might reach out to people and you're this amazing student, but they don't know you, and you might have to reach out to 100 people and never hear back. Or you might get lucky and the first person you tried to reach to supports really and has the time to reach out to young people. So what I wanted to do now is turn to our student panel a little bit and give them a chance to tell you why they made the decision they did to take ASR. What we have sitting up here are 4 upper class students who chose for the first time to try and do independent research. And so I'm going to invite you to tell them your story a little bit. Why did you end up in ASR this year, and what maybe makes you feel passionate about it?
So hi, my name is Anne Zapecki, and last year at the beginning of my sophomore year, I decided, with the encouragement of my parents, to take AP Computer Science at the high school. And I knew nothing about computer science, nothing about it at all. And so I was a little bit overwhelmed in the beginning because there was girls in the class. There was also a bunch of guys who had been programming since they were in middle school, and I had never had any exposure. But I ended up really, really liking the class, and so there's no follow-up class for computer science at the high school. So I, after the encouragement of my swim coach, who actually was a teacher at Los Gatos High School in chemistry, or in earth-based science and physics, she encouraged me to talk to Miss Messenger about pursuing computer science in the ASR class. So that's how I decided to take the class.
So hi, my name is Mikana Gori, and I'm an international student. I moved here to the US a year ago from Italy, Rome, and Italy is a really beautiful place for monuments, history, but not for research. And you can see that. I grew up practically near a church, near the Vatican, so the atmosphere is really close-minded, and we were taught that change and new experiences were something not to accept, something to fear, and that we only need to accept it was really needed, if change was really needed. So I never set foot in a lab. The first time was last year when I enrolled in chemistry, and I was actually pretty overwhelmed, but I was so happy because I always had this passion since I was 3 years old for science in general, and it first started when I watched like a cartoon series on the human body. It was the time when there was still VCRs, and I would always beg my mom for that. Yeah. And actually my interest, while growing up, my interest shifted from anatomy, then to biology, and then I ended up in engineering, just like that. I don't even know why. And I spent last year in chemistry, and I really liked it a lot. And then I became interested in engineering, and I suddenly came to know about advanced science research, and I really like the name because it seems like so fancy. Like advanced science research, wow. I was like, I had to try that. So I went to Miss Messenger and talked to her about my passion, and she gladly welcomed me to the class. And I also had to say that the best thing of the class for me is really the atmosphere of the class, the mood that there is. You could practically hear like this background noise of minds that are working. It's really amazing. Like everyone is so focused to really find a solution to a problem or finding new ways to resolve this problem. And I really like that about my class, and it's really amazing.
I'm going to remind everyone to write questions down. Okay, so my name is Olivia. I'm a senior. This is my 3rd year in class. So I started when I was a sophomore, and I actually didn't want to do science when I was younger. I was very convinced I was going to do English for a long time. But I started in freshman year, they have biology. You can do honors or regular, or you can do earth-based science. I ended up doing the honors biology class, which is really hard, but I would definitely recommend it for anyone who's going into high school. And my biology teacher suggested that I take this class the next year because I did really well and I really liked it. And I kind of blew him off a little bit because I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But I think definitely one thing you learn is that you shouldn't necessarily just take the classes that you know you're getting into or that you know you're going to like. I really just didn't want to take it because I didn't know anyone in the class. But you know, not thinking about it, my parents kind of gave me a little push because they knew I kind of wanted to take it. And so once I started doing it, I really enjoyed it. You really learn a lot about how to take what you learn in other classes and apply them. And even if things don't necessarily work the way you want them to, you like look back at the end of the year and you learn so much just doing things on your own. I got it.
So I'm Lila, and it's my 1st year at ASR. Like Olivia, I took honors bio freshman year, and I really enjoyed the class and getting to learn from Mr. Schultz, who's a fantastic teacher. And then I decided that I really enjoyed biology, so I decided I wanted to take AP Bio my junior year, and I enjoyed that again junior year, and so I decided that kind of the next logical step in that progression was to take advanced science research and kind of take that love for biology to an independent level and try to do research on my own and see if I continue to like it like I do. So I'm pursuing biology in college as well.
Hi, I'm Rachel. So, like Lila and Olivia, I took honors bio freshman year, and I didn't like it. And so, from there, I took chemistry sophomore year, and it was okay. And then, junior year, I took physics and AP computer science, and I fell in love, and I just, it was everything I loved, and I was, good at it. And so, I really liked that. And then, after, junior year, I thought, oh, I have to take science senior year. And I didn't really want to take AP Chem, so I decided to take ASR and be able to do a research project in anything I want to. So I was thinking either physics or computer science.
And then this summer I went to a program where I did astrophysics research and learned that I don't really like astrophysics, but the part that I did like was the computer science aspect of it. And so I realized I wanted to do computer science, and this class gives me a chance to actually have to learn things on my own and be independent and do something that I don't know how to do.
Thank you for sharing the reasons why you went to ASR. I'm going to pose the last question to the professional panelists, and I'm thinking of maybe one more question for the girls, and then we'll open up questions for the audience. And the last question is, what challenges did you meet along the way, and how did you overcome them? So there are two very, I guess, like strong challenges that come to mind among many that I've gone through ever since I entered this nebulous space of engineering and science. So one challenge that comes to mind is, of course, we are all aware that engineering and software engineering is still largely male-dominated. And one of the, for the most part, like I did have very good male mentors as well as female mentors, but one of the challenges that I faced very explicitly was, there tends to be this sort of unsaid notion of startup culture that really embraces a lot of stereotypes. I don't know if April can relate to a lot of this, but a lot of the sort of like fratty culture that seems to be internalized by a lot of these startups and software companies. And while I was working at a particular company, I was the only woman on a team of 60. Terrible. And, it's not just a numbers game, because you can, as stark and as severe that imbalance is, I think that it is the responsibility of any organization to really support an environment that's conducive to helping people who are minorities, who are women, grow in that respect. And I think it involves having this cultural sensitivity, or having this, sensitivity toward the fact that there are different people around. If your organization is largely, if the median person at your organization is like 26-year-old male, that can be really, really hard to just fit in. And on top of that, I was experiencing a lot of just explicit misogyny, explicit, really, really sexist comments that made me extremely uncomfortable. And this affected me professionally. So when it comes to actually how I overcame that, I was an intern, by the way, at this point, and I had no power whatsoever. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, there's all of this stuff that I have to learn, 5 programming languages I've never seen before. And then on top of this, I'm facing all of these really, really weird issues where I'm going through situations where the comments that they're really saying make me extremely uncomfortable. And it took a lot of courage to actually be able to bring this up with senior management, but one of the things that I did was, I drafted this Google Doc of all of the issues that I was facing, had particular examples, and I was careful about it. So I actually, I went online and I did some research because I didn't want to hurt anyone's career, and I was sort of savvy to sort of go through that exercise. And what ended up sort of happening out of all of that was I ended up giving a presentation to the broader company around, how can we make this a more inclusive space for all types of people, and it sort of kicked off this larger initiative to improve the culture. And that's one small step where I took a very personal struggle that I was only facing and then brought it up with someone, and then it went from there, right? So back to, I think, Sabara's point, when you are a young person and when you are, when you feel as though you might be the most underqualified person, never let that inhibit your confidence or anything, because I assure you that even if you're, overwhelmed with self-doubt, but you have that instinct and you want to commit to just making the world a better place, not to get too, not to romanticize it too much, I think that you can definitely make impact, and that was one example that I think I was able to do a bit of that.
So part of my background that didn't get introduced was that I was also an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz in the game design major, and the capstone project for that undergrad degree is to make a game over the course of a year in teams. So you join this group of classmates that you may have had classes with, may not have had classes with. You form teams among them, and you have to make a game by the end of the year. And my team sort of became the token women group. Like in our class of approximately 75 students, there were 6 girls, and 3 of them, including myself, were on my team. And we decided I was the team leader because a lot of my mentors and supporters around me were, I had this idea to make a game that taught players how to crochet, because when you play games, you learn the mechanics. Why can't those mechanics be about something like a skill that you can use in real life? So that's where the crochet game came out of. And originally I was on someone else's team, and they were pitching an idea, and it was super boring, but whatever. And then I had, it was another one of those dungeon crawling hack and slash Elon type of games. And the people in my corner were like, you know, you should really pitch your game, you should go for it. And I did, and it was really hard getting a team of 6 people around my game, because it was like, a crochet game? What? Like, no one in the class except me knew how to crochet, or even what it was. And so it was a really hard sell, but I was able to get a team, and our game was greenlit, so we were allowed to make it. And throughout the entire year process, like, we got flack from all of the other teams. Like, we were the girly team, we got the, is that even a game? Like, we got so much, like, we were hounded by the other teams, but the professors were in our corner. They were the ones that supported me in proposing this. They were like, not direct mentors, but they were in our corner, giving us support. They would not put up with overt harassment, so that was one thing. The other thing was I was the team leader, and anyone who got flack on our team, especially the girls, could come to me, and I would act as the manager, the mediator between our teams, to minimize friction between us. But ultimately, the advice that I got and I followed through was stick with your guns. I did not cave. I did not choose a different game. I didn't let these people change how my game felt or played. It was a really hard time separating critical feedback of like, this game isn't really fun versus like, this is a girl's game and I hate it because it's a girl's game. It was hard to sort of sift through that feedback. But sifting through that feedback was a great learning experience in terms of being a game manager, because you never know when someone's just going to not like your game because it's not their genre. They're not their cup of tea. But, you know, ultimately, I think by sticking with it and going through with our game and completing it and releasing it, that was the nail in the coffin, the see guys, we did this. We were able to accomplish this game in the face of all of our adversity. And so that, I think, releasing the game was the sign that we overcame it.
So I'd like to kind of turn the question around and argue that if you don't feel like you're challenged, then maybe you're not in the right spot. I feel like even like from high school, where you're like the only girl in computer science class, even through college, there was not a lot of girls who were in classes. At the same time, it was kind of like, the way that I looked at it was like, oh, look at me breaking these stereotypes. Like, kind of thought I was like a maverick or something. But at the same time, like, that was what inspired me to do all these things. And at the same time, along that vein, a lot of it is just having the confidence in your skills. I feel like a lot of times, girls are dissuaded from going to science, technology, engineering, etc. because of a general lack of confidence as compared to like their male counterparts. But a lot of times there's lots of studies and papers you can read about this where really they perform the same. It's just having the confidence to go and be like, oh, I know that this is this really hard class, and maybe it'll be a struggle. Maybe I don't want to take it because it'll be too hard. But no, take it. Like, don't be afraid of failure, kind of thing. And then even if you fail, like at least you can say what you learned from it. Another point about having a very male-dominated kind of fraternity atmosphere, a lot of times it comes from ignorance or unawareness that it's even happening in the first place. So speaking up in general, just being like, hey, that's not okay, goes far, because a lot of times they don't realize that it's happening. I definitely went to a conference where a guy was introducing a female engineer, There's like me and X, and believe it or not, she's a female engineer. And something as small as that, right? It's sexist, but like when the guy was saying it, kind of probably thought it was a compliment. So even small things like that is worth pointing out. And just changing the whole attitude.
For me, I would say there were 3 really big challenges so far in my scientific career. The first one being an adult who had studied chemistry for years and years and was the professor at the most renowned university in Bangladesh, telling me that I couldn't do my project and that it wouldn't work. That was a really big one. The second one was the second time I went to Bangladesh and was implementing my water purification project, and it didn't work. And I only had 3 weeks to get this thing running so I could give water to children, and it didn't work, and that was horrible. That was the second one. And the last one, which was most recent over the summer, was I was in a similar situation. It was a program for minorities in engineering. And one of the boys in the program made the comment that it was just a women's pity party. And so I'm going to talk about the latter just because I feel like it's on the same theme, and I think there's a really key message to get out of it. And so we had split up the class into computer science for advanced students and computer science just for people who never coded before. And so there were 10 of us in the advanced class, and there were of course more guys than there were women. And one of the boys had, and who's my very close friend, my best friend of the program, said, "Oh, it's just a women's pity party." And immediately, even though he was my friend, I turned to him and said, "Are you serious?" And just confronting him right there in the moment and showing that it was not okay was so much more important than anyone coming up to me afterwards and saying, "That's not okay." And just being very vocal and in the moment and saying, "What are you talking about? Like, how can you even say that?" And so after that, he apologized profusely, but I refused to talk to him because if you have that opinion, especially even at Stanford, because all the students there were Stanford engineers, if anyone can have that opinion, even though he was my closest friend and I cared about him a lot, I didn't think that I could overcome his bigoted point of views. And so out of that story, I want all the young women in the audience to get that if you know something is wrong, you shouldn't abide it under any circumstances, and you definitely should not continue being friends or associating yourself with someone who thinks of you or what you're doing in a lesser position. And so that was one of the hardest things, and that's probably what I would say to take out of all of my struggles.
So on that note, what I wanted to lighten the mood a little bit and ask our younger panel members again to sort of help our younger audience members relate. If they were going to give advice to themselves entering high school, given whatever challenges or choices they've made or not made, what would that one piece of advice be? So I gave them a little bit of warning that this question was coming, and we're going to see what they have to say.
My advice to myself would probably be not to be afraid to try new things, because throughout my high school career, I have been somewhat not interested in doing things that I wasn't doing before. I didn't think that I would ever enter into computer science. My dad was a big proponent of it, but I always said no, that I would never do that. I was going to be a teacher. But then my parents continued to encourage me, and so I decided to take a chance and try it, and that was probably one of the best decisions of my life. So I think the piece of advice that I would give myself is not to be afraid to try new things, because it's really important, and you'll never know what path your choices will lead you down if you don't make those choices.
Yeah, when I first came to the school, I was terrified. Like, a monkey was probably more capable than me to speak English, and yeah, I didn't even know where to ask information. It was just me, my little map, and my backup, and my list of classes. So, but I didn't let that take me down. I thought of it like it was a challenge that I had to take. I thought, yeah, what that attends me to Europe, just the normal life that I had in Italy. I didn't want that. I want to have something new. So I said, giving up is not an option. Going back is not an option anymore. So I just said, well, here's the challenge, let's take it. So I just did that, and I didn't enroll in normal classes. I mean, I did. I took chemistry and algebra 2 and anything like that. But I also took AP and AP English. And was seriously, it wasn't related to science, but it was probably one of the best decisions because I learned so much about the culture of this country and its history, and it was really useful for me. So a piece of advice for me is just think of it as a challenge and do the best you can. That's my piece of advice.
So I think a lot of times with girls, especially who really want to be competitive in very competitive fields, is they get very caught up in just, you know, GPA and what classes am I going to take, and there's this person in my class and they're smarter than me and I don't know what to do about it. I would think a good piece of advice for people going up, and for myself, would probably be just relax a little bit. If you take the classes that you're interested in, and if you're challenging yourself, things tend to work out. And there's gonna be moments when you feel, there are definitely moments when people feel like they're not capable, or that they can't cut it with the other people, because there's always gonna be moments when you're surrounded by so many smart people, especially when you get into these really like advanced kind of fields. But it's gonna be fun. Like, things work out, and you really learn so much just from taking these classes and doing what you want to do in school.
So I have kind of two separate pieces of advice I give myself as a freshman. The first one is to stay well-rounded, because I think obviously like STEM classes and that course of study is really important, and if that's what you're interested in, it's really important to pursue those things, but at the same time, it's also really important to stay academically competitive in other classes, like English, because if you're, you know, a fluent writer and you have, you know, an ability with words, it definitely translates to sciences and things like that. So definitely stay well-rounded. And then the other thing I would tell myself is not to be intimidated by other people who might have more experience than me or better ideas than me, because I think definitely even coming into ASR this year, I was intimidated by everybody else in the class and that they had already been in the class before and that they would have better ideas than I did. But there's no better way to get better at those things than to take the class and try it and go for it.
So my advice would be that even though like you're starting a new school and there's so many more opportunities, you don't have to take 5 AP classes and 2 honors classes and kill yourself. Because really, like for me, I personally am not the biggest fan of English, but I take regular English and I'm fine with it, and it's something that like sometimes I enjoy that class and everything. And because high school is a time to enjoy and to learn what you want to do, it's not a time for you to try to be perfect, try to be good at everything, because no one's really good at everything. And also, just like when you go into high school, have a voice, have your own voice and be yourself, because if you just try to be that kid who's like studies every day, 5 hours a day, gets all A's, takes all the AP classes, you're not different, and it's nice to be different and be your own person.
I just wanted to reinforce one really strong sort of theme that's come out. I think everyone sort of mentioned it, and that was, you know, you're going to go through a ton of challenges and a ton of situations that are going to feel extremely uncomfortable. When I started my first year of engineering, I had never written a line of code, like ever. And you know, like a lot of women on this panel, I was filled with a class of these guys who had been programming since they were like 7 years old. I don't think this mic is on, or maybe I'm just, okay. As long as you guys can hear me. I'm kind of yelling, sorry. Okay. And I think that, you know, that's okay, and you have to realize that whether it's like, you know, confronting your challenges within your career or going through a really, really personal struggle, that anxiety or that initial sort of inhibition, like, you're going to grow from that, and that's okay. And, you know, everyone starts from somewhere, right? Like, there was a time when Bill Gates didn't know how to program, right? There was definitely a time when Steve Jobs did not know a thing about, you know, design or anything along those lines. I work at Khan Academy, and like I work with Sal like every day, and it's super cool just being around him and learning from him. But one of the things that I think I admire most about him, just as someone who's leading our team, is that he's like always really humble and curious and has this intellectual curiosity. Like, hey, we might not know, you know, going into this
a great thing to do. And one of the best examples is, I am not the best at coding, but Rachel down there on the panel, we were in computer science here last year, and for our final, we had worked on it for a month or so, and the code was just horrible. So the last day before the final was actually due, my entire group called up Rachel and was like, Rachel, please come over and please help us do this code. And Rachel came over and she helped us do our code. And it was just, it's great because you learn and you grow, and I learned so much just by asking for help. So it's not a bad thing to not know what you're doing. It's just bad if you don't do anything if you know you don't know what you're doing.
Okay, so we do have quite a few questions, so unless there are other people who want to comment on what we've been talking about, are we doing okay? All right, so I have a stack in front of me that cover a couple different categories. I'm going to answer the easy one first. It says, how many after-school hours are required for the ASR class, and how is the ASR class graded? So this is really a very specific question, and it's what you get out of ASR, what you put into it. There are no requirements for after-school or extra hours, but I think Olivia could probably speak the best to that one if you want to grab the mic and talk about how much time you had to spend outside of just class time.
Hi. So like you said, there's definitely no requirements. If you can get it all done in class, like, more power to you. But I think it's really not, it doesn't feel like a requirement, because by the end you get really involved in your project. You really want it to work. So you'll spend a lot of time. Last year I did a project at a different high school because we didn't necessarily have like the equipment I wanted to use. So every day or not every day, but a lot of days for 6th period, I left school at lunch and drove half an hour to the other high school, did whatever I was going to do there, and then got out at like 3, drove home, or drove to practice, and then spent probably more time on the road than I would have liked. But you just put in so much time. I went in on the weekends, you go in when you can. So definitely, as your projects get more involved, you will spend more time doing it. But then the year before that, I could get most of it done at school. I would stay half an hour after school if I needed to do something that took more than the 90-minute class period. But it really doesn't feel like a chore. Like, you will spend a lot of time doing things if you want it to be successful and you want it to really be a challenging project. But it's fun. Like, it's not going to be something that it's a downer on your high school experience.
And just to kind of give you the real answer, I didn't really want to avoid it completely, is I do open up my room after school, and when we get to where the projects are all chosen somewhere around late November and across the semester break and all the way to the science fair in March, we spend like one weekend afternoon, and we have to come in on school holidays if they're growing plants and things like that. So it's something that's very project dependent. And the class is graded based on whether they follow directions and meet milestones, because science is not 100% success, right? You learn a lot more from your mistakes, so they're never penalized when things don't work. They're only penalized that they didn't read the directions that said you needed to turn that draft in on this day. So I pretty much want to give everybody an A. It's not an honors grade point class. It's a class where the growth is all very individualized, and I want to make sure that they're getting the most out of it that they can. And they've made the choice to give up that GPA bump to be in ASR, so I definitely want to reward that. There's a couple other questions here about computer science, and they're sort of beyond my scope. I'd almost invite a board member to talk about them. It's about why don't we offer more computer science in second levels, and those kinds of questions are very complex, and they're not really something I can answer here in terms of encouraging girls' interest in these programs. That's what some of these say as well. I think we've tried to cover that. It's really about the girls' passion and whether they can see a practical application for what they're doing. That's what I've seen in the young girls. And yes, go ahead.
If you're looking for like higher level classes, there's a lot of like, if you take college classes, there's like online college classes in your school. My school did not write a class to become a site to get out of college. We need a mic louder. Yeah, very loud, please. The one in front of you. College classes are available. Can everyone hear that?
Hello?
other things, like you can take online college courses, even like community college. There's also a lot of online things now that exist, like edX, Coursera, MIT OpenCourseWare, all these different opportunities for you.
Should I throw in my plug there?
Yeah, Khan Academy has great JavaScript, like, intro to sort of drawing courses where you can see visual stuff. In addition to that, I use Code Academy a lot, code.org. There's like a ton of resources out there where this is something that, you can really push yourself in. So, yeah.
I'd also add, there is a flyer in the back table. It's a white flyer, and it has some summer things that you can do. Because I know, especially for high school students, although you do want to learn it, and learning is the most important, you do want to have something to put on your Common App and to put on your college essays. There's a lot of stuff to put down. So I would encourage you to do summer programs and to learn. Of course, learning is the most important thing, and you want to be 9 months well. So the flyer in the back, there's a white handout with like summer opportunities that you can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add, I think that when I was in high school, like a lot of and even during my time in undergrad, I think that one thing that would end up happening is everyone sort of got caught up in, making sure that their resume had X, Y, and Z, and that their resume looked really, really awesome, or their application to whatever school looked really awesome. And so they would do all of these programs and learn all of these new things just so they could, dump a lot of skills and dump a lot of things onto their resumes. And while, that's a very, very real and that's a very important part of getting to the right opportunities, I think that it's also really good to be honest with yourself in terms of hey, do I really enjoy spending my time doing all these things, or am I just doing them to look good on an application, or do I really want to make a difference here? Am I actually passionate about it? And I think the more honesty you have toward that, it's just so much more sustainable, just long term in your career. So I would really, really encourage just some soul searching and figuring out what makes you happy.
I'd kind of like to go back to the question of what can we do to encourage girls to get interested in the STEAM areas. And I think, I know from personal experience and also from research that I've done for my advanced science research project, that girls really need encouragement because we're afraid to try things if we don't have people that are there to back us up. The majority of us are afraid to, for instance, enroll in a class that is very challenging in math and science and that we have no background in. And so I think that encouragement from peers, from teachers, from parents, from any mentors is what really gives that push into the STEAM field.
And that was a wonderful lead into the last kind of set of questions, which were how can we help young people who are interested but maybe don't have people that are encouraging them. And I think that's a tough one, right? If you're a girl sitting there and you are interested and no one's encouraging you, that's where you take a page out of Sparrow's book, and when the expert says you can't do it, you need to tell yourself I can, and there's ways to get help through your school and connect with your teachers. Your science and math teachers would be the perfect ones to talk to see what sort of opportunities there were. And the other one here is losing girls in middle school and early high school, and how can we fix that? And I think it's a tough one too. Obviously the schools and the parents and just the social aspects of adolescence have a huge part in that, where the shift in girls comes, it starts to move towards looking good and the friendships, whether they're male or female, and that's where the focus shift happens. And I think we just need to focus on the whole child, and that's an important part. And that's really, the parents' role to try and set the boundaries and keep the academics in focus, but keep life in balance. And I don't know if anybody else has something to add about that. All right, let Anne do it since she's right here first.
Just speaking off of that, I think that it's really important especially for the members of the audience who are in middle school or early high school, to stick with what you want to do. Don't let what maybe the social aspects of things are telling you to do interfere with what it is that you want to do, because in the end, what you want to do should be the most important.
Sorry, one really quick point. We've talked a lot about, having mentors outside and seeking all this help, but remember, you're also a really powerful force in the development of your friends and your peers. So, although, you're this person who's seeking a lot of, advice or a lot of support, don't forget that, when it comes to a lot of your friends, you will be that source of support, and just creating like a broader community of making sure that you guys are there for each other is also just as equally important.
Yeah, self-motivation is definitely self-motivation is a key part of self-motivation is really important. And it will show on your resume. If you are going out and getting passionate about something and then researching what you need to do to get it done, and you're like, I made this thing all by myself. There wasn't a class project, although those are awesome. It wasn't a job, it was something that I was passionate about, and you put it on your resume. The first question you will get asked is, what is that? And then you'll start talking about it and showing how passionate you are, and they'll be like, yes, I really like this person. They have a passion, they know what they're doing, and it looks really good. So I mean, a lot of people might go for breadth on resumes, but showing that you can go latch onto a project, be passionate about it, and stick through it to the end on your own is really, really powerful in terms of getting jobs, getting internships, getting into any kinds of programs.
So there are a couple of questions relating to STEM and art and the software field. So in your education, have you encountered any teachers or programs that explicitly connect to STEM and arts? If so, what were the benefits and challenges of it?
Repeat the question, please.
Okay. In your education, have you encountered any teachers or programs that explicitly connected STEM with the arts? If so, what were the benefits and challenges of it?
Hello? Okay. This is just one small example, but my focus in college was computer graphics. And so with that, there was a lot of making the pretty pictures you see in Pixar here on the screen with a lot of math. So that's my most obvious point, and I guess that's why I latched on to computer graphics in the first place, is because I felt like it could join the both art and math and computer science sides all together.
I guess I've got a big point for this, just because one of the reasons why I love game design so much is that it wasn't just about the programming, it was about the game and the experience, which is a lot more squishy than most science topics. And at the game design undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, the curriculum is split between computer science classes and digital arts and new media. So you are taking what would be arts classes from people who major in films and digital media, sort of that are a completely separate group from the hardcore computer science people. You won't get the bullying in the film classes. You're going to get the female teachers who teach you what you need to learn about Photoshop to make your stuff look pretty, and you'll learn, I guess what I'm saying is that game design classes, there is a lot of room for art, and that you can make awesome mechanics and try and make things technically cool, but there's a lot more to the experience of making something feel good and resonate with people than just the science part of game design.
The argument goes with everything though, right?
Yeah.
Everything in life is all about the combination of art and science.
Yeah, I mean, once you, we have these subjects when we're all in high school or middle school, and as you grow up, you realize that everything is so connected. Really, when I was an undergrad during my third year, I made this robot that was designed to teach young kids how to program without actually making them program. So on an Android tablet, they would drag and drop puzzle pieces to connect like sort of like a story and visually, like, you know, graphically sort of like come up with what the robot would do. So it'd be like, take a left, then take a right, then make a cow noise, right? So like essentially a lot of that was spent like working with young kids, hanging out with them, figuring out like what is the broader like story, and even like, you know, doing like a lot of work with sociology professors and figuring out like, you know, cognitive science and sort of like, you know, what motivates students to learn. And I mean, it's no surprise that I ended up working at Khan Academy, where that's my job every single day, right? Like I'm figuring out like, hey, how do students like, you know, what's motivating, what's not, what's a total drag, like how do we make this exciting? How do I make math exciting? And that's what I really love most. So that's a clear combination of figuring those things out right there, right?
I'd also say the art.
I would also say, like, in terms of arts, the creativity you bring to solving what you do is definitely included. There are better ways to do things and worse ways to do things, and the more creative you are and the more even like artistic you are in approaching things, you can get a better solution. I would also say even incorporating the humanities into what you do, like helping people through whatever science or engineering you do, even though it's not technically art, it is bringing that humanities and that helping people and the other side into what you're doing. And if you can be passionate about both, I think that's a great thing for you to do.
So this one is about, can you talk about the importance of written and spoken communication in scientific technology fields?
So the question was, can you say something about written and spoken communication within sort of the technologies fields? There is so much to say that I don't know where to begin. I think though that communicating sort of what your goals are, what you intend to build as an engineer, the problems you intend to solve, being able to work with other people and being able to, you know, sort of get them on the same, align them and get them to sort of like see where you're coming from. That's a huge aspect of really any sort of technical project. And this goes beyond, you know, just like delivering speeches and writing up technical manuals or technical documents. When I was at Dropbox, we had a developer conference, and at this developer conference, I rapped. Like I got on stage and I said, yo, what's up? And I actually wrote a rap about the API that we were launching. And, you know, it was like really weird. And so I get on stage and people are, and they introduce me like, you know, this is an engineer on the team. And then like all of a sudden, like you hear a beat and I'm like rapping on stage, right? But it was a really effective way of communicating sort of like what we were building. And that just goes to show, like, don't be afraid to, you know, think outside the box when it comes to communicating your ideas. As well as that, of course, there's immense value in growing your written and communication skills. So, you know, those English classes, like, definitely don't neglect any of those in favor of your math and science courses whatsoever.
Yeah, you're always going to be asked to write papers in school, so my academic background, having written communication is really important, sending emails all the time. But verbal communication also really important because you're in research in the PhD fields. You're writing really techniques of really complicated documents that are supposed to be communicating your novel idea and why it's novel to a broad audience. And generally, those papers are historically bad at being well communicated. And I think having good communication skills verbally and written and in writing will help disseminate your ideas, help get people on board. They'll help people understand your viewpoint faster and get them in your corner faster. And you know, on resumes when you're going for jobs, the first thing that is on the list of like every person that I've ever talked to is good communication skills. So yes, you need to practice them in situations like these where we're speaking whenever possible.
I'd just like to point out too that MIT had a whole semester class where we were forced to like communicate, I guess, give presentations on things, and you can make this big, fancy, really technical thing, but it really doesn't mean anything if you can't express it to others. And in general, able to, communicating is so important and working in a team, and I feel like it's much greater to realize that as you get into the working world too, where it's like, oh, there's this huge thing and I have to reach out to someone in this very far out team because nobody else knows. And being able to communicate those problems and comfortable speaking with people is a big factor.
So in terms of communication, obviously you need to be able to communicate and you need to be able how to project and say what you mean. But I think something even more important is knowing what to share and knowing what not to share. I think novel ideas are very, very rare, and if you have a very good idea, you want to be able to get the help you need to keep on going forward, but you don't want to be able to share too much so that it gets stolen or something that you are passionate about and you are working on can't happen because someone else stole your idea and did it better. So communication is good. You should be able to write and speak and do everything very fluently, but just keep in mind that you need to protect what is yours and what's your property and what's your intellectual vitality, because I feel that sometimes can become a problem.
Okay, I think we have a few minutes remaining, and just wondering if anybody would like to actually come up and ask the questions to the panelists directly. Board and the district for their leadership in putting this together. And there are some, I guess, pages in the back.
That will talk about our upcoming events, and the next one is on November 18th. It's Shauna Shapiro. She's speaking on mindful parenting.
I think this is turned on again. So I was just saying that we have some flyers in the back of our upcoming Parenting Continuum events, and the next one is November 18th, and Shauna Shapiro speaking on mindful parenting. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you the panelists for being here, and